Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conclusion, you fellas, the conclusion to week 4 with Monday Night Football, and we got a good one. We got a West Coast matchup. Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Chargers. These are two offenses that look very good right now. They're both throwing at a top 5 clip in the NFL, so expect a lot of points and a lot of points through the air. At least that's what we're seeing on the Vegas front, as this game has an over-under, depending on where you look, around 52. We should be expecting some nice stuff tonight. And let's break it all down from a pre-app standpoint and break it all down from a DFS standpoint, position by position, the overall plays that I'm looking at, the leverage plays. We'll talk about some ownership. I have ownership projections. Everything's already set up. All I ask from you as we get into this beautiful video, you beautiful people, to hit the subscribe button. Thank you. As we slide on into it on a late night, let's look at some of these guys. And now this is a very interesting slate because you have on this slate, I mean, I don't remember a slate where I could think of 10 different dudes that have a very, very good chance at being a captain option. Like normally I'm rolling out there 3 to 5 captains. It's mainly wide receivers. If there's a high pass catching running back with some upside and good usage and goal line usage, Leonard Fournette last night, for example, looks like a nice running back option for a captain spot. But on this slate, I mean, you've got potentially 5 receivers, 2 quarterbacks, a tight end or 2, right? A running back, and there's so many captain options. It's going to be interesting when I'm on the live stream about an hour and a half before lock, 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you're known. But when we're on that live stream tonight, it'll be really, really interesting to see how many of these guys I get and where I'm going to cap some of those in terms of just limiting my captain pool to a couple of names so I'm not spread too thin. But you'll start right up top with Justin Herbert, who is a fair price point. Like we just had Tom Brady, who's not as mobile as Justin Herbert, who arguably has a very similar, I would say, offense in terms of how it's set up for passing as Justin Herbert. We saw him last night be $1,600 more expensive than this Justin Herbert price point. In the matchup against Vegas, Vegas so far has a top 5 secondary. They have the #1 pass rush through the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. I don't think that holds up all season long, but so far they've been solid. And this offensive line for the Chargers has been a little bit banged up. It has not been. Slater's been solid, the undersized man that they took at left tackle, 14th overall. He's been very solid. Lindsley's been solid, but they already lost Balaga. They have some injuries and shuffling on the offensive line so far, so it's not going to be the greatest offensive versus defensive line matchup for the Chargers, but you already have Justin Herbert being top 5 in total attempts, #4 in passing with 319 yards per game. This is a solid spot for Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is firmly in play because of the fact that his price point is so damn cheap. I expect Justin Herbert to be the highest owned player on the slate. I have him projecting out right now as my highest owned projected for points player on the slate at 22.8 by about 2 fantasy points. He looks very good. I do indeed prefer him to the quarterback on the opposite side, who is also cheap at 10,800, who's playing out of his mind, in Derek Carr, but Derek Carr is also firmly in play for me. Derek Carr does not project out as a terrible play. When I look at my overall top plays, he will be behind Justin Herbert and some of these other skill position players that we're about to talk about, but Derek Carr is the NFL leader in deep attempts with 23 through 3 games, averaging over 7 deep attempts of 20-plus yards per game. That's a lot of upside. He's the NFL's leading passer right now with over 400 yards per game. He went to overtime in one of those games, so that helps, but 401 yards per game for Derek Carr. Hello. He's not going to have the greatest offensive line matchup against a top 10 pass rush, but the secondary has been fine. It has been okay. Asante Samuel Jr. looks very good for the secondary. In general, it's a fine matchup. And I'd expect Derek Carr to probably come in with 10 to 15% less ownership at a cheaper price point than Justin Herbert in this game where he is a 3-point underdog. And historically, the underdogs will score, at least at the quarterback position, they'll attempt more passes. And as they attempt more passes, that's going to correlate directly with more yardage, with more fantasy points. So that could be an interesting leverage spot right away, is going Derek Carr over Justin Herbert, saving yourself the $400 and not that much in projection difference, but getting different. And now this is where an interesting part of the slate starts to arise. It's when you look at what is in the exact pricing here. The exact pricing after the quarterbacks is actually Mike Williams at 10,200. And now if you're looking at the first 3 weeks of the season and fantasy points per game, that makes sense. Mike Williams at 10,200 would be a fair price point. But when you compare him to the prices of the players around him, we're talking a top 2 tight end in the NFL, the guy who leads the NFL in tight end targets right now in Darren Waller. We're talking one of the best, the top 5, top 3 even maybe, pass-catching dual threat running back when it comes to trying to win in a PPR format like DraftKings or like Prize Picks for your props in Austin Eckler. We're talking the team leader in this game with 27% red zone target share. Red zone target leader with 9 in Keenan Allen, being significantly cheaper, right? We're talking all of these guys are cheaper than Mike Williams. It's going to create an interesting conundrum, if you will, tonight, where Mike Williams at 10,200, he looks like a fine play. I do think that he's probably $1,000 overpriced, maybe even $1,500 overpriced based on my projection for him. But Mike Williams looks like a stronger play because of the fact that his ownership is going to be lower. I have Mike Williams out of all these players at $8,000 or above, which is going to be 6 total. I actually have him as the lowest owned because he's sandwiched within the quarterbacks who project out much better than him, and the other guys below him project out even better than him, more fantasy points and a lower right now price point. So it'll be interesting tonight. Mike Williams will be a good play. He'll be a fine play, but the fact that he'll be lower owned, maybe 10%, 15% lower owned than the guys around him, I say it's closer to 10. It gives you a little bit of a leverage play there. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and play him, but he's definitely strongly in play as he leads this team with 22 receptions. He's only 1 target behind Keenan Allen for the team lead on a 26% target share. And oh yeah, Keenan Allen is number 1 in the NFL in red zone targets. Mike Williams is number 2 with 8 red zone targets so far, a 31% red zone market share, and it's going to be a fun matchup versus his former teammate in Casey Hayward, maybe some Travion Mullins. So Mike Williams is in play at 10,200. Now, I do have to admit, it is very hard for me to want to get to more Mike Williams outside of maybe in my single entry lineups and 3 max as sort of leverage plays, but want to get to him on scale more than these next guys because of the price point. But everybody else will have that same thought process, so it's important to have ownership and projections and those types of things so you understand leverage. You can get my ownership, my projections, no better time than the beginning of the month on Patreon down below. We have an optimizer now. Yes, an optimizer, a Discord with 900 Discord members in there, rankings for tonight, projection, ranks, ownership, all that stuff. Get on in, join the family. What are you waiting for? Come get these schmacks. Hey, come get these schmacks. What are you waiting for? So, Austin Ekeler, 26 routes per game right now. He has a 100% catch rate, which is fantastic. 15 targets, 15 receptions so far. Not to mention, he's also leading all of the other running backs who have seen touches in this backfield in overall carries by 15 with his 35 carries for $166 and a touchdown so far. So, you're getting a nice matchup here, a positive 40% run blocking advantage. Ekeler is going to look good. You get a slight discount off of Mike Williams, but the real head scratcher on this slate is the fact that Keenan Allen is $8,800. I know that Keenan Allen is not having the same fantasy output as a Mike Williams. Mike Williams averaging almost 27 fantasy points per game because he's finding the end zone a lot early and often. Whereas Keenan Allen, though, he's averaging 20 fantasy points per game. That's really fucking good. He's leading this team in overall targets with 32 at 27.7% target share. He's leading the NFL with 9 red zone targets and a 35% red zone target share. He is an insane route runner. He has this built-in floor that doesn't really rely on touchdowns because of the volume that he sees. Keenan Allen at $8,800 should be one of the highest owned players on the slate tonight. I'd expect him to be a top 2, top 3 owned guy with basically his quarterback Justin Herbert, and then we'll see what ends up happens with Darren Waller, Ekeler, and Derek Carr's ownership as we get closer to lock. Right now, I have Keenan Allen projecting out tied for the 3rd highest ownership. We'll see if that holds or goes up as the day goes on because he's just dirt cheap right now. Keenan Allen is insanely cheap. Out of all these players, any player at $5,000 or above, because once you get below that, the value gets a wonky just because they're so cheap. Out of every player $5,000 or above, $8,800 Keenan Allen is my number 1 point per dollar value, the best bang for your buck play there. Looks very strong. Now, his teammate is below $5,000, but right now is looking like probably my top overall value play on the slate when you factor in point per dollar, not factoring in the price tags above $5K, just every price range, and he just misses out on beating out Keenan Allen because he's below $5K. I don't know how Jared Cook is $4,400 on the slate. I don't get it. They're treating Jared Cook as if he's just like a normal stationary tight end that might catch 2 or 3 balls. Jared Cook so far this year, through 4 games, has been playing very well. He's 4th on the team in routes run, ahead of Austin Ekeler right now. He's running 31 routes per game. He has 16 targets and 10 receptions. The solid value is the number 6 tight end matchup if you're talking just tight end versus their position, some Corey Littleton in this game. I don't understand the price point of Jared Cook. Realistically, Jared Cook should be $5,800 would be like, okay, that's fairly priced. It's tough to get there. $5,400 would be like, okay, that's just completely fairly priced. I can get there. At $4,400, how am I not expected to get there? How am I supposed to play a kicker projecting out for less points right now than Jared Cook at the same price point with obviously nowhere near the ceiling since Jared Cook has multiple red zone targets and also, yeah, he has a touchdown 2 times called back this year. How am I supposed to not get to Jared Cook? So Jared Cook at $4,400 looks very, 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 very juicy. Jared Cook, no matter what, always comes through. Jared Cook very quietly as well. If you play the narratives and a revenge narrative on prime time against the Oakland Raiders, I don't see why he would have any bad envy or juice. He ended up going to the Packers after that and having a fine career. I don't see why you'd be mad. But he will look like a strong value play. you can continue to scroll down and you still see a lot of value. So we cover all these players. You still see a lot of values where it's now some of these Las Vegas pass catchers. How do you not like them? How are they all not captain viable? Some, yes, way more than others. But before we get into those players, I want to let you know where I lean on my props today so far. I have 2 props. I'll probably add a couple more. I have $250 in this prop. We profited about $800 in the 30-something props that we took last week. We'll take that. It wasn't the greatest of weeks, but $800 profit is $800 profit. $250 in play tonight. So this is a nice little one here. What I'm taking is Austin Eckler over 33.5 receiving yards. That is, I have him at 47, so this looks very good. And Darren Waller over 6 receptions. It's prime time. Darren Waller, the leading pass catcher. Last time you saw him in prime time, he ended up having like 19 fucking targets. Darren Waller over 6 receptions. I have him for 7.5 receptions. You take those two, you combine them together, you put whatever you want on it. I put 250 on it to try and win somewhere around 500, 600, 700 bucks. I plan on taking more props throughout the day, but you go down below and you get a free bet. This might end after week 4, a quarter of the way through the season. Who knows? Already a quarter of the way. Use the code SAL. You get a free bet up to 100 bucks down below on Prize Picks. Again, FREE, free bets up to $100 Rooskies. Over on Eckler, over on Darren Waller, win some money, close the week off right. And now let me tell you why on Darren Waller, which I don't really have to tell you all that much why. He's insanely mispriced here. This is Darren Waller, who almost on every single showdown slate is $10,000+, right? He's now cheaper than the quarterbacks. He's now cheaper, which is fine. He's now cheaper than, though, Mike Williams and Austin Eckler, and similar in price to Keenan Allen. Darren Waller, a man who leads all tight ends right now in overall target share. I'm very confused again by his price point. It's so easy. They want to make it fun, right? Monday Night Football, $1 million maker. They want to make it fun, DraftKings. I think they're purposely mispricing some of these players, to be honest with you, because Keenan Allen and Darren Waller in the same lineup together normally should be $10,000 a piece. And now neither of them are over $9,200, which is absolutely insane. He has 21 more routes than any other player on this Las Vegas team. He sees a 27% target share, not just leading his team, but leading the entire NFL. And he also has a top 5 matchup on the week. So it's 32 targets on the season. You factor in with the fact that he has a top 5 matchup. He's in prime time where the stars show out to improve their brand. This is something that people forget. Like, stars show out in prime time games. They show up. There's a reason why Antonio Brown sees spiked targets in a primetime game. When you're in a primetime game, not only are you under the lights and you're juiced up for the game itself, you understand, if you are a smart player, that this is a fantastic marketing opportunity for you with all the eyeballs on you. You show out a little bit more, you get your name out there more, you can pump your other businesses, your charities, your brand in general, your name's out there in the media for the next week if you have a good game. That's what stars do, right? That's why they're called stars. When the lights are down and it's dark outside, they shine in the dark light. They shine on the stage. So Darren Waller is one of those guys, and you see it continuously. He is one of these DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams type guys who primetime games balls the fuck out. Now, Henry Ruggs is interesting. Henry Ruggs, since we saw him in week 1 struggling, got the big catch towards the end of the game to help them out and get into overtime. But Henry Ruggs, since then, he's been seeing more deep routes. He's been running all these different types of route concepts and looking very good. 18 total targets on the season, a downfield weapon for them. He should see all 3 of these cornerbacks, so it's a nice matchup. Henry Ruggs is firmly in play as a captain option as well. Now, it's really hard to want to get to these other Vegas pass catchers as captain options because of Darren Waller's usage in general, because of how cheap Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler are. But there's no doubt in my mind, I mean, you just saw it 2 weeks ago, that the 5-catch, 100-yard game and a touchdown for Henry Ruggs at this price point and 30-plus, 40-plus fantasy points as the captain bonus, yeah, that's going to look really good. Hunter Renfrow is the one that makes it a little bit more difficult to get to. He is seeing a lot of targets. He leads all the wide receivers on this team in routes run and targets. He's running 30 routes a game. He's seeing a 9.3 yards per target, which 9.3 yards per target for Hunter Renfrow, I mean, slot receiver, that means he's getting downfield a little bit. Like, that's top 30, top 35 in the NFL for a slot receiver. So that's very, very good, right? You're getting him to move outside more. They're actually moving Henry Ruggs into the slot a little bit more than they normally do. When he's in the slot, you should see some Campbell, which is a fine matchup. So this is a good spot for Hunter Renfrow. He's kind of the guy that just kind of fits into some lineups. But the guy that I really like, and when I say really like, he's not going to be 100% on the captain spot, but a really under-the-radar play here today is going to be Bryan Edwards at just $5,000. Now, his stats are not showing out yet. And I think I said Renfrow leads all receivers on this team with 111 routes. He's second behind Bryan Edwards, who leads all receivers, not Darren Waller, wide receivers with 37 routes per game. And he's had some really tough matchups. When you look at his DVOA, which is just taking into account your defensive matchups, I mean, he's been in some brutal spots. The Steelers secondary that just held down Devontae Adams pretty nicely to a 60-reception game or 60-yard game yesterday. And he's seen Xavier Howard. He's seen Marlon Humphrey. He's had some difficult matchups, Bryan Edwards. He's number 2 in the NFL right now at success rate when you factor in his competition. Number 2 in the NFL. Now when he starts to get some of these easier matchups, and maybe not necessarily today in terms of easy matchups, but there's no lockdown cornerback that you're looking at out on the other side and you're completely worried about. Bryan Edwards has 13 targets. He quietly has over 200 yards through 3 weeks as a second-year player who was banged up his rookie year with no camp, basically is a rookie at this point, and he's number 3 right now in the NFL in yards per target, meaning that if you're going to play Bryan Edwards at $5,000, when he gets his targets, they are deep down the field. All it takes is 3 to 4 to 5 targets for a 3-4 catch, 80 yards and a touchdown type day, but he's getting the volume as well, averaging close to 5 targets per game so far. So I like Bryan Edwards as, a flex spot. I think he's definitely in play for your captain options as well. You start to get to the kickers who are both in play. They're both going to project out nice as each team is projected for over 24 points here. Kickers are fine. The problem with kickers on a slate like this is there's so much damn value. There's Jared Cook down in this range. We'll get to a couple of other potential value options, but there's so much damn value just in general because of all the top end guys being cheaper, starting all the way up at the quarterbacks, that you don't need to get to the kickers when there's so many wide receivers like Renfro, Edwards, Jared Cook at tight end that are only like $1,000 more. As always, defenses are in play. I don't get to them all that often unless there's really no value, which there's enough value on this slate. Jalen Guyton's going to be here. I'm sure people will go to Jalen Guyton. I've got him projected for like 5 fantasy points. He's $2,400. He runs a lot of routes. He does not get separation. This has been a problem for Jalen Guyton. I believe an undrafted free agent now 3 or 4 years ago. This has been a problem with him his whole NFL career. Last year, he ran like top 10, top 15 routes in the NFL and got no separation, barely seeing any targets. So far this year, he's run 98 routes, right? He's the clear wide receiver 3. Running 33 routes a game is a lot of usage, but only 8 targets on the year. Seeing about 2 or 3 targets a game, 5 catches for 62 yards. I would expect to see somewhere between 2 and 4, maybe 5 targets in this game. He just continues to struggle to separate. But if you're looking for a wide receiver, if you're looking for a player who's going to run, rarely do you get a wide receiver running 30-plus routes seeing this price point at $2,400 on a slate like this where there is a really good quarterback attached to him and a high team total of 27, 28 of overall points. But the one thing about this guy is that he might just be fucking Mac Hollins. If you remember Mac Hollins on the Eagles or on the Dolphins, this dude just is fast. He runs like 30, 40 routes a game, and he sees one target because he gets no separation. It's just run straight down the fucking field. Now, Jalen Guyton's route tree has changed a little bit this year, which gives you some more hope, but if he gets his 4 fantasy point per game average, he's not going to do much. Like, even at $2,400, I know he's cheap, but you still probably need minimum of 6 points, probably 8 to 10 plus points for Jalen Guyton to pay off for you. That being said, there's no strong values, I would say, like below. Once you start to get below the kickers, not a lot of guys stand out. Like, I'm not really jumping up and down for the defenses. Jalen Guyton is there. That's about it. You get Kenyon Drake here, who's massively overpriced. Josh Jacobs, by the way, is a game-time decision today. But even if Josh Jacobs misses, you've seen Peyton Barber be the lead running back on this team. It's just Kenyon Drake getting some of the passing game work. In 2 weeks without Jacobs, he's only had 15 rushes for 33 yards. That's less than half of what Peyton Barber's seen. But he has seen an impressive 53 routes and 10 targets. That's what keeps him in play. So at $5,400, he's in play. But don't get it twisted. I prefer every single one of these Las Vegas pass catchers, every single one of them, that Ruggs, the Renfro, and the Bryan Edwards in the same price range, those 2 other guys, the 2 second guys named there, in the same price range as Kenyon Drake. Give me them over Kenyon Drake. Either way, I think Kenyon Drake's role is the same tonight, whether it's Josh Jacobs or Peyton Barber. Kenyon Drake is probably going to touch the rock 5, 6, 7 times, and he's going to go out there and he's going to run some routes and he's going to see 4, 5, 6 targets. So no matter what, I think his role is the same tonight. You get Daniel Carlson, the kicker, the Raiders defense, and this is where I'm at overall. Now when you start to try and find values, outside of Jalen Guyton being the clear and obvious value, below the $2,000 price range, you don't have the Brandon Bolden play like you did last night. You don't have these values that we've been continuously getting this year. There's none down here, right? There's just not much. If you force me to choose one, I would tell you $1,400 Foster Moreau. I have him projected for 3.2 fantasy points. I am not that interested in Foster Moreau, but if you put the gun to my head, the water gun, don't worry, we ain't popping no brains tonight. That's what my cousin Louie does. But hey, Foster Moreau quietly running 55 routes on the season. 55 routes so far in the season for Foster Moreau. He's used in the red zone. We know how much they like to use tight ends. Just look at Darren Waller on this team. So Foster Moreau, mainly a pass blocker, former draft pick a couple of years ago, but he's had 3 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown on 5 total targets. You could probably expect somewhere between 0, so he has 0 points, 0 targets, and 2 targets tonight. You're hoping for the touchdown. At the end of the day, you're hoping for the 2-catch, 17-yard day, and the touchdown, and he's got 10-plus fantasy points at $1,400. He is the only guy below $2,000 that I like. The only guy that I like right now below $2,000. Well, why don't I like the XFL legend Donald Parham? Because he's the clear tight end too, and he's more of a blocker. He's only ran 35 routes this year through 3 games compared to Mr. Jared Cook's 94 routes. He's only seen 2 targets and 1 catch for 19 yards. Like Donald Parham right now, it's tough. If he's going to run 10 to 15 routes, at best 15 routes, probably 10 to 12 routes tonight, compared to Foster Moreau, who's going to run 18 routes, it's really tough to want to get there, especially when we know that the guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are seeing the top 2 red zone target shares. They're on the same fucking team, the top 2 red zone target shares in the NFL. That means that they want to use wide receivers in the red zone, where we know that Las Vegas is more likely to use tight ends because of Moreau's usage and Darren Waller's usage. Larry Roundtree projects out for like 2.4 points. He stinks out of Missouri. He's just a bad running back in general. The rookie, 13 attempts so far and 2 targets throughout the year, not being much involved. Expect 3 to 5 touches. On those 3 to 5 touches, expect like 20 total yards. I'm not interested. Joshua Palmer, operating as the wide receiver 4, 25 total routes, banged up. Not really interested at $400. And then you get Justin Jackson, operating as a running back 3, only has on the year 10 opportunities. 10 opportunities, though, at $200, you're going to probably see 3 or 4 opportunities, meaning 2 carries and a target in this game. He would have to score a touchdown or have like a 40-yard reception, because even if his 2 or 3 touches went for 30 yards tonight, 3 fantasy points at $200, I don't care if he's that cheap. 3 fantasy points isn't doing much for me. So I'm not really interested in those guys. The other guys that I'll point out are the more expensive no's for me, and then we can close this shop up for you. And that's just going to be Josh Jacobs, who at $7,600, even if he's healthy tonight, he's not going to be 100% because he's a game time decision. They just saw that Peyton Barber can actually shoulder the load for short periods of time. They have Kenyon Drake still out there seeing all the pass catching work and like a third to 40% of the running back work. So Josh Jacobs, even if he's in tonight, you're going to need definitely touchdown or bust, but you might need 2 touchdowns or bust out of him. He's the Damian Harris play of last night. He has a better matchup than Damian Harris did last night, but he's the $7,000 running back that'll see 12 carries and no targets, and you're hoping those 12 carries go for 80 yards and a touchdown or 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Peyton Barber is the other no, because, well, if Josh Jacobs is in, it's definitely a no for Peyton Barber. Well, if Peyton Barber's in, it's the same exact thing as Josh Jacobs. Yeah, he's cheaper than Josh Jacobs, but it's and he actually had some targets the last 2 weeks, so we'll give him that, but it's the 12 to 14 carries on the ground, touchdown or bust. Give me the wide receivers that are cheaper in the price range or similarly priced. Some people want to play Zay Jones. I will not be one of those people. He's only ran so far 30 routes. You can expect 0 to 2 targets in this game. He's had 3 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown on the year. Alec Ingold is a fullback. He's ran actually 25 routes and seen 6 targets, so he does project out for me for close to 2-ish fantasy points. Not really interested, though. And Jalen Richard, we'll close it up with this. Jalen Richard is now officially practicing, but he has 21 days to be reinstated. He's only practiced for 3 days since being taken off the IR. He's been designated to return, so he has not yet been activated to the active roster. That could happen tonight. We'll see on the inactive news. It could be sneaky if there's no Josh Jacobs and Jalen Richard slots in as sort of this maybe gadget guy, but at just $200. But I'm not expecting much out of it. Even if he did play still behind Kenyon Drake and Peyton Barber, I'm not expecting much. I'm not even expecting him to be active. Now, before we completely close it up, I want to show you that last night you only had like a 70% fill rate on the Sunday Night Football main contest on SuperDraft. This is the best spot, not even close. If you're trying to win $8,000, $2,000, $1,000, whatever it is dollars tonight, SuperDraft is the best spot. And it's as simple as this. I am like their main fucking marketing person compared to DraftKings and FanDuel, paying billions of dollars in ad revenues for commercials, for top-end content creators with massive reach, like the Joe Rogan show has DraftKings ads on it, versus me. So I'm not pushing that many people there to fill these contests. And these contests are filling at a 70% clip, meaning that this is your easiest chance. You will beat 30% of the field just by entering a lineup. That does not happen on DraftKings. You don't even beat 1% of the field on DraftKings. So let's start to try and build out a lineup here. Now, I have SuperDraft projections over on Patreon as well. You can use the code SAL, simple, my name's Sal, and you'll get a free $20 to play with, so go ahead. My number 1 captain option right now, there's a couple of guys because there's high multipliers, like Jared Cook is a high multiplier, but let's put Keenan Allen in the captain spot. He looks really good there, and then we can build out some of the flex plays. So how about a Chargers onslaught? Keenan Allen in the captain spot, we then get Jared Cook, we then get Austin Eckler, and we get the kicker for the Chargers, and you have to fill in the last one yourself. You can do that on your own. Those are guys who look good. The kickers actually look good because they get a 3x multiplier. SuperDraft is just, each player gets a multiplier. So Austin Eckler is a 1.3x multiplier. Whatever he scores, you multiply it by 1.3. Keenan Allen is a 2.1x multiplier. So whatever he scores, right, he's a value even on SuperDraft right here. So I think that's a pretty solid start to this. Other guys who look good are going to end up being the quarterbacks will look decent. You're going to see some high, nice multipliers on Brian Edwards and Daniel Carlson, the kicker for Las Vegas. You can fill out the last spot here. You can obviously fill out in different ways to try and get different than the 11,000 people that are going to see and hear this video. But yes, that is where I would go to. Your best chance, 30% of the field, maybe even more, will not fill in these contests. It never fills on Sunday Night Football, nowhere even close. Monday Night Football will fill maybe a little bit more, but nowhere near full. Use the code SAL, get a free $20. Your best chance of winning $8,000. If you're spending $20 tonight, putting it on SuperDraft, that is your best chance to hit a GPP. You just have got to beat 30%. Why not work smarter instead of working harder? Why can't you can do both, but why not work smarter? Beat less people to win the same amount of fucking money. So thank you for tuning in today. Before you go, subscribe to this here beautiful YouTube channel. We will be live at 6 p.m. East Coast time for about an hour before the game starts tonight. Schmacking you, answering your questions. You schmack me, I schmack you back, answering your questions before the slate starts. Thank you so much. You are all You all are beautiful people. The madness of the slate is on. I decided to match my fucking thick ass pumpkin today. Thick with 2 C's. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on the live stream later today. Best of luck today to all of you beautiful people.